My name is Randy Lindsay. I'm the author of The Milkman's Son. A DNA test meant to help me with my family history work revealed that my dad wasn't my biological father. I've shared my experiences with others who then told me their DNA stories. From heartwarming to shocking and all the secrets in between, this show was a collection of stories others have shared with me. Do you have a DNA secret? Welcome to My DNA Secret, where we discuss funny, charming, and sometimes shocking family surprises. My name is Randy Lindsay, and I'm here talking today with Britt Booher. Hi, Britt.
Hello.
Okay, and so, Britt, what I understand is that you have a story where it starts where you're in your son's living room discussing how people have these DNA surprises just pop on them out of the blue, and it happened to you right at that moment.
Right.
Okay, let's hear about that.
Okay, so we were up visiting my son and his family, and he works for Ancestry.com. And so we started talking about, we had all gotten our DNA test done, and he's told about several stories that he's heard that come across constantly with Ancestry. And I had gone on Facebook as we're sitting in his living room, and I see there's a message there. And actually, I could read it to you if you'd like.
Okay.
Okay, and, of course, it's in the non-friend box. I don't know what is that called, the box that just is there. And I open it up, and it says, "Hello, this is going to come out of left field, but I just got DNA results from Ancestry that link me to you as a second cousin. I'm also linked to," and he named my mother, "as a first cousin. I was adopted in 1979, and I'm trying to find out where I come from. I'm hoping you might be able to help. I also don't want to intrude or cause any possible problems, so I understand if you can't. I'm hoping to hear from you. Sorry for the possible shock and surprise." Well, this actually had happened on my mother's birthday, which is the name that's mentioned in this message. And I immediately wrote back. I was super excited about it, and I said, "Michael, this is awesome. I am actually sitting in my son's living room who works for Ancestry.com, and here's my phone number so we can talk and we can see if we can find out the connection. So great to connect with you," and I left him my number. Well, no sooner did I do that than a few minutes later, my phone rings, and it was him, and we start talking, and we're trying to figure out who it would be on my mother's side, because he states that he was adopted in 1979. He was 3 months old at the time. So the only people that we could figure out was my mom's half-sister is the first name that came to me, because I thought of her brother, and I'm like, oh no, he's too old. He wouldn't have. And the baby was born in New York, so that was another clue. So it had to have been on my mother's side, her siblings that were in New York. And so it was, the first person that came to mind was my aunt. It didn't even dawn on me that there could have been another option, and that was my uncle, who had unfortunately been murdered at the age of 23.
So that would, if he's dead, that would make it pretty hard for... Yeah, I
Right.
can see that. That would make it a little bit more difficult, yeah.
Plus, when I would have to say my aunt was a little bit more wilder, and so that's why probably I thought, well, it was probably her kid and that she gave up to adoption. And my uncle at the time was an honor student at Stanford and had this bright future ahead of him, and I don't know why, I just never went there. So, and as time went on, we discovered that it actually was his son.
Really?
Which is amazing, because it was a very, very traumatic time in our lives, especially for my mother, and for losing my uncle. And so this was kind of, I don't know, it was kind of special. It was kind of neat to see that there was someone.
So, I mean, maybe like, so the uncle's gone, which is sad, but if the uncle had a son or a child, then he's kind of continued on in a way, right?
Yeah,
so
right.
That's kind of a redeeming element. So how did you feel? What were your emotions when you found out immediately? I mean, you read that message, and so often we're telling stories about how we discovered, like in my case, I discovered that I had family I didn't know about, and I went looking for them. But how often, do we get stories where someone is the person who's contacted, like you were? So
I was super excited. I was so willing and open to help him to figure it out, to get the mystery solved. And so to me, and everyone that was in the room was super excited about it. They thought, well, this is so cool. So I was very excited.
excellent, excellent. And was everyone in the family excited about it?
No, I could sense hesitancy with some family members.
Okay.
And some of it was very, very sensitive because of once we had realized that it was not my aunt who actually that got pursued, and my aunt actually had just passed away also. And so her only living relative was our grandmother, and who was very ill, and her daughter. And her daughter was really struggling with what was going on with her mother. And when Michael's wife had contacted...
So who's Michael?
Michael is my cousin.
Okay.
My new cousin. When he had contacted my aunt's daughter, she was very resistant and actually upset that she was contacted because of what she was personally going through in her life. And she really didn't want to discuss it. And how she worked through that was her father was able to communicate with Michael and get him some answers. And from there,
Okay.
Michael was able to determine, we were able to determine, no, it was not, there was no way possible that he could have been the son of my aunt. And so then the only other option then was, of course, my uncle. And as Michael digs in, and that's his story to tell, he finds his birth mother and his birth family. And
Okay.
it's confirmed that, yes, absolutely, it was my Uncle Noel.
Okay. So how does it feel on your part to help him to connect with his family?
Great. I mean, I saw the joy that he experienced in finding out. He had shared with me so much his adoption story, and even though he has a beautiful family, a wonderful wife and children, he wanted to know who he was, and
Right.
to help him figure that out, and to be open and sharing photos of our family and the history of our family, and who his grandfather was, who his father was, his mother was, I didn't know his mother, his father, his grandmother, all that. It was really, I could tell the joy it brought him. And I was willing to share that with him because I'm proud of my ancestry.
Well, good, excellent. All right. So your uncle was murdered, right?
Right.
And
Very young
also,
age, 23.
Young age. Did that become an issue with reconnecting with Michael?
When my uncle was murdered, it was a very, very big story back in New York in the day. My grandfather was a big executive, and so it had made the news, and it was very traumatic for my grandparents. It was very traumatic for my mother. I remember my mother going back and helping my grandparents with that. And it wasn't talked a lot because of the pain and the sorrow. And to me, finding Michael, or I should say him finding us, it's kind
Right.
of like a little gift.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what kind of even makes it more special.
Okay, now that's how you reacted. But earlier you had mentioned not everyone was as excited. Was there anyone specifically on with that issue that was less excited because of it?
Well, I mentioned a little bit about my aunt, my other cousin, and they were going through their own grief with what was going on with the rest of the family. But I think, and that's why they were so hesitant. They just didn't want to have to deal with it, and they were
All right.
maybe that couldn't be like, oh, how could this have been? No way.
Right.
That's not possible. And I think with my mother, it wasn't that she was not wanting to, but I think in some way that it opened up some hurt. and in revisiting Noel and revisiting his life, which I looked at it differently, like rejoicing about this gift and Noel's life.
Right.
So,
But it brought pain to her
It
for
did.
that loss, and maybe even compounded because not only was Noel lost, but so was the child, right? I
maybe
mean,
so.
for a lot of years.
maybe so.
Excellent.
I mean, I think what's interesting about that, I think about all the years lost. What would have been different?
Right.
And we didn't live in New York. I grew up in Hawaii with all my family, and but what would have been different? My grandfather visited often to Hawaii.
Yeah.
Would I have known Michael more? Would we have had more of a relationship? Because his years, we're probably the closest in age out of my cousins, which I always had cousins that were my children or younger in age. And so that would have been, that's what I have thought of is, wow, this is a cousin that is closer in age to me than my other cousins, maybe. I don't know.
Right. From my own experience, I mean, I had a cousin my age, and we did so many things together. So many of the stories I have growing up involve my cousins that were close to my age and us
Right.
doing things because, I mean, we were great friends. And not only were we friends, we were family. We were family and friends. And that kind of made the events more special because of that.
Yeah, and I don't believe in luck. I believe in fate. I mean, for this to have happened on the day of my mother's birthday, and I was contacted, and that's really cool to me.
Yeah.
That a family member that we've been reconnected basically on the day of my mom's birthday in that
Yeah.
line of the family. So, I think ancestry, doing DNA and finding out your ancestry is so cool, just so neat, and I think it heals people, it reconnects people. I feel that everyone needs to know who they are, whether they continue relationships or not. There's that desire to know who you are,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and then you get that coincidence, right? On the mother, except it's not a coincidence, right? And I see that so often. I mean, in my own story. So my book's coming out. It's coming out on my mother's birthday.
Oh, that's
Isn't
cool.
that amazing?
That's really cool.
Right? And when I hear that, I'm thinking like, this can't be an accident, right?
No.
This can't be just some random coincidence. There's some guiding force that puts these things together.
I do, and it's not to say that your adopted parents are not, not important, because that's not
Right.
true. I mean, because
Right.
you've been adopted, and we have 2 adopted daughters that we adopted as teenagers, and they're my daughters. I don't consider them anything but that.
Exactly.
But I think it's important to know our DNA. I think it's important to have those connections, and I think people are put on our lives for reasons, and I think Michael was put back into our life, and it's a gift. So
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Okay, any last things you want to say before we wrap up?
I think that's it. I think we tied it up. I feel it's everyone's desire to know who they are, where they came from. It doesn't mean they have to have this bond the rest of their life. They just want to know, and they want and have that understanding. And I think that's just a human instinct we all have.
I agree. Okay, so that's Britt's story. That's the show for today. We'll be back again with another exciting, well, we hope, exciting DNA story. Until then, what surprises is your DNA hiding?